Hey, what's up, everybody? Actually, today I'm going to go over arrays and loops in Java. So we're actually going to talk specifically about the for loop. I am using processing, so if you're not familiar with processing, processing is a language that was developed to help kids see code in Java a little bit easier. So you won't see a lot of the public static main and all that stuff, but it will basically be Java. A little simpler, and it has a couple functions that are built in. So you see these blue things are all things that come with processing. So I've already started with the setup, so let's give it a setup size of 600 by 600. And we'll just draw, let's set the background. Oh, let's just make it black. No, let's make it gray. We'll do 100. So if you don't give it RGB, just give it one parameter. Oh, let's go ahead and give it RGB. We'll go 100, 0, 0. So we'll do a little bit of dark red. And then let's go an ellipse, and we'll do it at X, Y. Well, let's do circle. And we'll do it 20, 20, 2200, 40. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Alright, so there it drew a circle. So it's 20 pixels to the right. And since it's 40, by the way, that's the width of it. So it's kind of strange. It's not the radius. So if I actually make that 40, you'll see. If I move it over 40 pixels and down 200, because that's the positive Y direction, the 40 is actually the distance from here to here. So if you look from here to there, that's kind of strange, but that's how it works. So don't worry, that's how it is. So anyways, this is a circle. It doesn't really matter for the video how this works, but that's kind of why this is a cool program, is it shows kids like what their code is actually doing. Now it's not moving or anything because I've hard coded these numbers. So let's give these guys let's go ahead and make a regular variable for x. So let's go int x, y. Oh, actually, let's not use the same. Let's do a and b. So you can't use a variable with the same name for an array as you would a regular variable. So what I can do now is I can do this a, b, and of course it'll be at 0, 0. So the center of the circle is now at 0, 0. So what I can do is in the setup I can say, hey, a equals we'll do 40, and we'll do b equals 100. Doesn't really matter, but that'll be an idea. Now, why is this better? Well, in the draw function, since this is an infinite loop, it's going round and round and round. It allows me to animate my circle. So if I wanted to move it to the right, move 1 pixel to the right. Each time it goes through this loop, by basically just moving this, then I can do that. And because I'm drawing the background over and over again, if you see a trail on yours, you just need to add this background. The background just wipes the screen each time. And there it goes, and it disappears. Okay. Now, that's cool if I'm just dealing with one. But once you start dealing with lots of objects and you have tons of stuff, then you're going to want to start using arrays. Especially if you want each thing to have its own x and its own y. So that's what I've got this right here. So this right here is an array of type int, which is for integer. So I don't know why I use ints. You could use floats. It doesn't make a difference. You declare the type and then you put these two brackets. And that tells the computer that you're going to use an array. I haven't told it how big it's going to be because I'm going to do that in my setup. So in my setup, I'm going to go x equals new int. And here you put in the size of it. So let's make it, let's do 4 just to start. And then we'll change it later. And so we'll do y equals new int. And we'll make it the same length. So how do you do that? You do x.length. And that actually will be, however big x is, I'm going to make y the same length. So if x is 4, y is 4. Now it's not going to change at all because I'm not even using it in my thing. But what's cool is now I have created an array that will allow me to create lots of circles. So that's kind of the idea. So basically you want to start using arrays once you start doing a lot of objects at the same time. And I mean a lot. You'll see by the end of this video. So now one thing is important to note is that actually I'm going to create a bunch of these. So first of all, I have to think of these arrays as think of them as like an empty, I think the best analogy I heard was like an egg carton. So when you tell the computer, hey, I'm going to have an empty egg carton, it goes, okay. The next thing I do is say, hey, this egg carton, it's going to have 4 spaces, so it can hold 4 eggs. I haven't put anything in there yet, so they'll all just be zeros if I ask it, but they're there. Those spaces are there. Now I'm going to populate each of those spaces, but I don't want to go through and type each one. If I did that, I would go x0 equals 40, and then I could say x1 equals 50, and then I could say x. And no, you get the idea, right? I'm already bored, and I've only typed 2 lines of code. So instead of doing it that way, what we're going to do is we're going to use a for loop. So you're going to write for, and the way a for loop is you do int I equals 0. Almost always you're going to see it written this way. The spaces, by the way, I just do that for myself to make it easier for my students. You don't need those spaces. You can ignore those spaces except for the space between int and I. But I like to use spaces, so you'll see me doing a lot of spaces. And then I'm going to stop it, and I wonder, where am I going to stop this? Well, in this case, I'll stop it at 4, and later I'll change that to x.length, but for now I'll just type it in so it's not more confusing. And then I++. Okay? And then you open your braces, and you close your braces, and instead of doing this way, of the long way, I can just do xi. So this is the counter variable I. Starts at 0, so that's what this does, right? So the first time. And I can just say this equals, and I can just do, let's do 30 plus 10 times I, which, by the way, will result, 40, sorry, plus 10. It will result in this same pattern, only I don't have to write it each time, so I can get rid of that. Okay? Now, if I run this program, nothing's changed because, again, I'm not using it. I run my program just to check that my code's not broken, because I hate writing a whole bunch of code and then it breaks and I don't know what I did wrong. So I like to run it whenever I can. I tell my students it's free. Run it. It's free. So let's do y sub I, and this time we're going to use a random number. So we'll do random, and we'll do all the way from 0 to 600. So in case you don't know how the random works, it generates a float between 0 and that number. I could do from negative to positive if I want to put 2 parameters, but if you just put 1 parameter, it will go from 0 to that number. Okay? Now, if you need to know, I need to cast it as an integer, so that's what this does. It turns the float, which is the output of the random function, into an integer. And for those of you who don't remember, a float is a decimal. And if you don't know that and you're watching this video, you need to go back and watch some earlier videos. But anyways, now my y values and my x values are all a little different. I still only have one ellipse. So that's because my ellipse is actually being drawn here. I'm sorry, my circle. So let's change this. So what I'm going to do is, instead of drawing that circle, I'm going to copy this loop. So actually, let's just copy this loop, because it's the exact same length. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it right in here. But instead of creating that, I'm going to copy this line, cut that out, and I want to do circle, replace that with xi, and replace this with yi. Okay? Now, if I run this, it's all great, but now I've got these circles all over the place, but they're not moving because of this. This is what moves it to the right. So how do I do that? Well, what controls the x position? This does. So you just do xi plus plus. And now, when I run this, not only will it generate 4 randomly placed ellipses, it'll put them all over the place. So it's kind of cool because they all have their own little thing. Now, before I go any further, I want to talk about some hard coding. You notice how I use x.length instead of using the number 4? I'm going to go ahead and replace all of these 4s with that. Okay, so I didn't want to do that first because it would confuse you. But this way, you'll see that I have, if I make a change, let's say I go, okay, I want 5 now. I don't need to edit the rest of my code. I can just have 5. In fact, if I wanted to, I could have 50, and I'd have 50 all over the place. You see how that works? Now, actually, you're starting to see the magic of it. So you see all these dots, and I didn't really do anything, and that's because each of my ellipses has its own x and its own y. And it's all formed right here. And then when I go to animate them, I can tell it to do all the same stuff. For example, I can do if xi is greater than the width of the screen, I just want it to reset. So I'm going to tell, I want those xi, so that position for that ellipse, I want that one to go back to 0. Okay? And what does that actually do? Well, now, when they get to the end of the screen, they all pop up on the other side. And you're like, oh, sweet. So now they're all doing it. So this one right here will pop up right there. So they all stay together. They're not being randomly generated. But if I want to, I could do that. I could actually change their y coordinates. I could say, okay, and the y coordinates, I want you to change that to the integer of a random number between 0 and the height of the... So instead of putting in 600, I could just type in height. Okay, and now, when they get to the edge of the screen, they won't appear the same place. So it'll just seem like there's an endless supply of dots rolling by. And so it's actually keeping track of them, so they are the same x's and y's. But watch what happens. I can quickly just change it to 500 and boom. And there's, oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I don't know why there's so many right there. 40, 10 times I. That's the x's. Must have... I'm not sure why that line of them is there. Let's see. Let's figure this out. So x is going to be 40 plus 10 times I, and I should be going from anywhere from there to there. That's very strange. Let's do something more fun. Let's make it an integer, and we'll do random, and we'll do the width. So all of these will be randomly generated. So that, oh, there we go. That's a little too much. Okay, let's make it a bigger screen. Let's do 800 by 800, and maybe we'll bring it down to, like, I don't know, 200. See if we can... Oh boy. Oh, so this is the problem. Gotta make sure I do. So this is the problem with hard coding. Always try to use variables. So width and height are the width and height of the screen. That way it'll always fill the screen if I decide to change the size. That looks pretty cool. So, anyways, that's the whole point of arrays. And the loops are pretty necessary for actually for populating the arrays. So if you don't know loops, then you're really not going to be able to understand arrays anyway. But definitely wanted to make this video. Hope you guys like it. Hope it makes sense. Please leave a comment if you have any questions. And like always, don't forget to subscribe and hit the alert button. Talk to you later, guys. See ya.